On the night of November 17, 1979, $2.6 million in cash vanished from a secure holding facility at Los Angeles International Airport. The money, destined for Federal Reserve distribution across Southern California, simply ceased to exist within the airport's tightly controlled cargo zone. No alarms were triggered. No witnesses came forward. No signs of forced entry were ever discovered. For 32 years, this theft remained one of the most baffling unsolved crimes in LAX history. The FBI's initial investigation involved over 40 agents, hundreds of interviews, and countless dead ends. Security footage revealed nothing. Employee polygraphs yielded no suspects. The money had evaporated as completely as morning fog over the Pacific. What made this case particularly frustrating for investigators was the absence of any trail. In most heists of this magnitude, someone eventually talks. Money surfaces. Lifestyles change. But in this case, nothing. The cash might as well have been loaded onto a plane and flown into the sun. The man responsible was Marcus Dwayne Thompson, a 41-year-old night shift janitor who mopped floors and emptied trash cans in Terminal 6. He lived in a modest apartment in Inglewood, drove a 12-year-old Dodge Dart, and was known among his co-workers as reliable but unremarkable. He arrived on time, kept to himself, and never caused problems. Marcus had worked at LAX for 7 years when he executed what would become one of the most disciplined and patient thefts in American criminal history. He walked past FBI agents during their investigation. He continued mopping floors in the very hallways where wanted posters eventually appeared. And for over 3 decades, he maintained such an ordinary existence that not a single person suspected he was living on millions in stolen cash. The truth wouldn't emerge until 2011, when a routine facilities inspection of a long-abandoned maintenance closet in Terminal 6's sub-level revealed something that would crack the case wide open. Hidden behind a false wall that had been painted over dozens of times, investigators discovered a space that would rewrite everything they thought they knew about that November night in 1979. Before we dive deeper into this incredible story, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Marcus Dwayne Thompson was born in Watts in 1938, the youngest of 3 children. His father worked the docks in San Pedro until a loading accident in 1954 left him permanently disabled. His mother cleaned houses in Beverly Hills, sometimes bringing young Marcus along during summer breaks. He watched her scrub toilets in mansions that cost more than his family would earn in 10 lifetimes. Marcus was bright. His teachers at Jordan High School noted his aptitude for mathematics and problem solving. But college wasn't a realistic option for a black teenager from Watts in the mid-1950s, even one with good grades. After graduating in 1956, Marcus bounced between jobs. He worked construction, drove a delivery truck, and spent 2 years as a stock clerk at a downtown department store before being laid off when the company relocated to the suburbs. By 1972, at 34 years old, Marcus had been married and divorced, had a daughter named Keisha living with her mother in Long Beach, and was working night security at a warehouse in Compton. The pay was terrible, the hours exhausting, and the future non-existent. When he saw a job posting for custodial work at LAX, he applied immediately. The airport offered better wages, union benefits, and most importantly, stability. Marcus started his position with Western Airlines Facility Services in March of 1972. His assignment was the night shift, 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., 5 days a week. He was responsible for Terminal 6 and several connected service corridors that ran beneath the public areas. These subterranean passages formed a network of access tunnels, mechanical rooms, and storage areas that most travelers never knew existed. The work was monotonous, but not difficult. Marcus mopped floors, cleaned bathrooms, emptied trash receptacles, and occasionally helped maintenance crews access locked areas. He was issued a master key ring that opened most non-secure doors in his assigned zone. Security doors required additional clearance he didn't have, but his keys got him into supply closets, break rooms, mechanical spaces, and administrative offices after hours. What Marcus possessed that proved more valuable than any key was time and invisibility. Night shift custodians are part of the airport's infrastructure, as unremarkable as the ventilation system or emergency lighting. People don't see janitors. They see the uniform, note its presence, and forget about it immediately. For someone patient and observant, this invisibility offered extraordinary opportunity. During his first 2 years at LAX, Marcus simply did his job. He arrived on time, followed his route, and collected his paycheck. But he paid attention. He noticed patterns. He watched security guards make their rounds. He observed where surveillance cameras were positioned and where they weren't. He learned which doors were monitored and which were simply locked. Most importantly, Marcus noticed the money. LAX wasn't just a passenger terminal. It was a distribution hub for valuable cargo moving through Southern California. Cash, securities, precious metals, and high-value merchandise passed through the airport constantly. Most of it was handled by specialized armored car services, with armed guards and strict protocols. But some of it, particularly cash designated for Federal Reserve distribution to regional banks, moved through a more routine system. This money arrived at LAX via commercial flights, was transferred to a secure holding facility in the cargo zone, and was then distributed to armored cars for transport to banks across the region. The holding facility was located in a reinforced room within the airport's cargo processing center, accessible only through security checkpoints, monitored by armed guards and closed-circuit cameras. Marcus had no access to this facility. No janitor did. The cargo zone operated under completely different security protocols than passenger terminals. But Marcus noticed something that most people overlooked. Infrastructure doesn't respect security zones. In October of 1974, Marcus was asked to help a maintenance crew access a crawl space beneath Terminal 6 to repair a water leak. The space was cramped and filthy, requiring him to squeeze through a narrow access panel and crawl through several hundred feet of tunnel lined with pipes and electrical conduits. While the maintenance crew worked on the leak, Marcus explored. The crawl space connected to a larger service tunnel that ran east toward the cargo processing center. Marcus followed it, his flashlight beam revealing a concrete passage roughly 6 feet high and 4 feet wide. The tunnel continued for what he estimated was at least 300 yards before terminating at a locked maintenance door. Marcus returned to this tunnel repeatedly over the following months, always during his regular shift when his absence from public areas wouldn't be questioned. He was simply a janitor accessing mechanical spaces, exactly what his job required. He measured distances, sketched rough maps, and began to understand the airport's underground geography. The locked door at the tunnel's end was standard issue for restricted maintenance access. It had a simple pin and tumbler lock, not the electronic security used on the cargo facility itself. Marcus realized this door likely provided maintenance access to utility spaces beneath or adjacent to the cargo processing center. In March of 1975, Marcus spent $18 on a basic lock-picking kit from a hardware store in Culver City. He practiced at home on door locks and padlocks until he could work quickly in darkness. By June, he could open the maintenance door at the end of the tunnel in under 30 seconds. Beyond that door lay another maintenance corridor, this one better maintained and clearly used regularly by airport staff. Marcus explored cautiously, always listening for approaching footsteps. The corridor had multiple branches, each serving different functional areas of the cargo zone. One branch terminated at a metal ladder that ascended to what Marcus assumed was ground level within the cargo facility. He never climbed that ladder during his initial reconnaissance. The risk was too great, but he began to understand the possibility that existed. If he could access the cargo facility through maintenance infrastructure, if he could identify where the cash holding room was located, and if he could find a way to breach it without triggering alarms or encountering guards, then perhaps something extraordinary was achievable. Marcus spent 3 years planning, not because the crime required 3 years to figure out, but because he needed to be certain, absolutely certain. Prison terrified him more than poverty. He would only attempt this if he could execute it flawlessly. He learned everything he could about airport security protocols. He befriended a security guard named Phil, who worked day shift and liked to complain about management over coffee. Through casual conversation, Marcus learned about shift changes, camera blind spots, and the chronic understaffing that plagued airport security throughout the 1970s. He discovered that the cargo facility's camera system was antiquated and prone to malfunction. Cameras frequently went offline for hours or even days before being repaired. The security company responsible for monitoring had a reputation for poor response times and inadequate training. Marcus also learned about the cash holding room schedule. Federal Reserve distributions arrived on Tuesday and Thursday nights, typically between midnight and 2 a.m. The money was held in the secure room until morning, then distributed to waiting armored cars between 7 and 9 a.m. This meant that on Tuesday and Thursday nights, millions of dollars sat in that room for approximately 7 hours. The room itself was reinforced, with a heavy steel door, electronic lock, and internal alarm system. But Marcus wasn't planning to go through the door, he was planning to go through the floor. In August of 1978, Marcus took a weekend trip to the downtown library and researched building codes and construction standards for airport facilities. He learned about weight-bearing requirements, ventilation systems, and utility access. He studied architectural principles that would apply to a structure like the cargo processing center. His conclusion was that beneath the cash holding room, there had to be utility infrastructure, electrical conduits, water pipes, HVAC ducts, and that infrastructure required maintenance access. That access would be protected by basic mechanical locks, not the sophisticated electronic security used at the cargo facility's perimeter. Over the following year, Marcus made a dozen exploratory trips through the maintenance tunnels beneath the cargo zone. He mapped every corridor, every door, every junction. He timed his movements and practiced moving silently. He identified the specific maintenance room that he believed sat directly beneath the cash holding facility. In September of 1979, Marcus confirmed his theory. Using a small drill he'd purchased at a hardware store, he carefully created a tiny pilot hole in the ceiling of the maintenance room, drilling upward through concrete and tile. The hole was barely 1/8 of an inch in diameter, positioned in a dark corner where it would never be noticed. Marcus inserted a length of wire through the hole and felt it pass through into empty space above. He'd breached the cash holding room's floor. For the next 6 weeks, Marcus prepared his exit strategy and acquired his tools. He needed a way to transport the money, a place to hide it immediately after the theft, and a plan for avoiding suspicion during the inevitable investigation that would follow. The transport solution was simple. He purchased 4 large duffel bags from an army surplus store, paying cash. The bags were nondescript olive green, exactly like dozens of other bags used by maintenance crews throughout the airport. The hiding place was more complex. Marcus couldn't take the money home. His apartment would certainly be searched once suspicion fell on airport employees. He needed somewhere secure within the airport itself, somewhere he could access regularly without suspicion, somewhere that would never be thoroughly searched. He chose a forgotten storage closet in Terminal 6's sublevel, 3 levels below the main concourse. The closet had been used for storing cleaning supplies decades earlier, but had been abandoned when the terminal expanded and new storage areas were built. The door was still on Marcus's keyring, but in 7 years of working at LAX, he'd never seen anyone else enter it. Inside the closet, Marcus built a false wall. He purchased plywood and paint, working during his regular shift over the course of 3 weeks. To anyone who might glance inside, the closet appeared to be exactly what it was: an abandoned storage space, maybe 10 feet deep, filled with ancient mops and buckets coated in dust. But behind the false wall Marcus had constructed, there was another 10 feet of space, enough room to stack 4 duffel bags filled with cash, enough space to hide $2.6 million for as long as necessary. By mid-November 1979, Marcus was ready. He'd rehearsed every movement. He knew exactly how long each step would take. He'd identified Thursday, November 15th as his target date, then pushed it back 2 days when he learned additional security personnel would be present for a visiting federal inspector. Saturday, November 17th, 1979, Federal Reserve distribution schedule confirmed. Security staffing minimal due to weekend hours. Weather forecast clear. Marcus went to work that night carrying nothing unusual. His shift began at 11 p.m. as always. He followed his regular route through Terminal 6, mopping floors and emptying trash cans while the late-night travelers moved through their journeys unaware. At 1:47 a.m., Marcus entered the maintenance tunnel system beneath Terminal 6. He carried his 4 duffel bags, folded flat and stuffed into a maintenance cart alongside his cleaning supplies. To any observer, he was simply a janitor moving equipment. The tunnel system was completely deserted at this hour. Marcus moved quickly through passages he'd traversed dozens of times, his flashlight barely necessary now that he knew every turn by memory. He reached the locked maintenance door in 4 minutes, picked it in 20 seconds, and proceeded into the corridor beneath the cargo zone. At 2:03 a.m., Marcus entered the utility room beneath the cash holding facility. He'd visited this room numerous times during his planning phase, always ensuring it remained undiscovered and unused. He positioned his bags, removed his tools, and began the work he'd been preparing for over a year. The ceiling was reinforced concrete, 18 inches thick. Marcus couldn't simply smash through it. That would create noise and take hours. Instead, he'd spent weeks researching the facility's original construction and had identified something crucial. The cash holding room had been retrofitted into an existing cargo processing space in 1973. The floor had been reinforced, but the reinforcement consisted of a steel plate bolted onto the original concrete foundation. Marcus wasn't going through the concrete. He was going around it. Using a portable pneumatic drill powered by a small compressed air tank he'd smuggled in weeks earlier, Marcus began removing the bolts that secured the steel reinforcement plate. The drill was relatively quiet, its sound muffled by the concrete surrounding him and the ambient noise of the airport's mechanical systems. He worked methodically, removing 36 bolts over the course of 90 minutes. His hands cramped, sweat soaked through his uniform. But by 3:34 a.m. the steel plate was free. Marcus lifted it carefully, revealing the original concrete floor beneath. This concrete was older, poured in the 1960s during the cargo facility's initial construction. It was also significantly thinner than the reinforced ceiling he'd expected, only 8 inches rather than 18. Using a concrete saw blade attached to a handheld rotary tool, Marcus cut a rectangular opening roughly 3 feet by 2 feet. The blade generated dust and noise, but both were manageable. The dust settled quickly in the enclosed space, and the noise was absorbed by the surrounding infrastructure. At 4:17 a.m., Marcus broke through the final layer of concrete and felt his tool punch into empty space above. He'd breached the cash holding room's floor. Marcus widened the opening carefully, removing chunks of concrete and stacking them quietly to the side. By 4:52 a.m., the hole was large enough for him to climb through. He pulled himself up into the cash holding room, his flashlight revealing exactly what he'd hoped to find. The room was approximately 20 feet square, lined with industrial shelving units. Stacked on those shelves were metal cases, each one stenciled with Federal Reserve identification codes. Marcus didn't waste time examining the contents. He knew what was here. He began lowering cases through the hole in the floor, working as quickly as silence would allow. Each case weighed between 40 and 60 pounds. He lowered 18 of them over the next 33 minutes. At 5:25 a.m., Marcus climbed back down into the utility room. He opened the cases using a small pry bar, revealing banded stacks of currency, 20s, 50s, and 100s, all in sequential bills prepared for distribution to regional banks. Marcus transferred the money into his 4 duffel bags, abandoning the metal cases in the utility room. He couldn't carry them through the tunnels. The bags were heavy, each one weighing approximately 70 pounds when fully loaded, but manageable. At 5:51 a.m., Marcus began his exit. He made 4 trips through the tunnel system, carrying 1 bag at a time and moving carefully to avoid making noise or drawing attention if he encountered anyone. The terminal above him would be starting to show signs of early morning activity, but the sub-level maintenance areas remained deserted. By 6:34 a.m., all 4 bags were secured in the hidden space behind the false wall in the abandoned storage closet. Marcus had moved $2.6 million in cash through LAX's maintenance infrastructure without encountering a single person. He returned to the utility room beneath the cash holding facility one final time. Using the concrete chunks he'd removed, he reconstructed the hole in the ceiling as well as he could, wedging pieces back into place and using quick-setting concrete patch he'd prepared in advance. The repair wouldn't withstand close inspection, but from above, in the dim light of the cash holding room, it would hopefully go unnoticed long enough for Marcus to distance himself from the crime. Marcus collected his tools, cleaned the utility room as thoroughly as possible, and exited back through the maintenance tunnel system. He emerged into Terminal 6's sub-level at 7:08 a.m., just as his shift was ending. He clocked out at 7:14 a.m., exchanged brief pleasantries with the day shift supervisor, and walked to his car in the employee parking lot. The sun was rising over Los Angeles. The morning was cool and clear. Marcus drove home to his apartment in Inglewood, his hands shaking so badly he could barely grip the steering wheel. The theft wasn't discovered until 9:42 a.m. that morning, when an armored car crew arrived to collect the Federal Reserve distribution. A security guard opened the cash holding room and found 18 empty metal cases scattered on the floor, their locks pried open, their contents gone. The FBI arrived within an hour. Special Agent Robert Chen led the investigation, coordinating with LAX police and airport security. The crime scene was sealed immediately. Every person who'd been present in the cargo facility during the previous 24 hours was identified and interviewed. Marcus was interviewed on Monday, November 19th, along with every other night shift custodian. The interview lasted 20 minutes. Had he seen anything unusual? No. Had he noticed any suspicious individuals? No. Did he have access to the cargo zone? Only to certain maintenance areas. Did he have any knowledge of the theft? None whatsoever. The FBI examined security footage from dozens of cameras throughout the cargo facility and surrounding areas. The footage revealed nothing useful. Several cameras had been offline due to maintenance issues, including one that covered a service entrance near where Marcus had accessed the tunnel system. But this wasn't suspicious. Cameras went offline regularly. Investigators discovered the hole in the cash holding room's floor 3 days after the theft. The crude concrete patch Marcus had applied had already begun to crack. FBI technicians traced the breach back through the utility room and into the maintenance tunnel system. But the trail ended there. The tunnels were used by dozens of airport employees with legitimate access. There were no fingerprints, no physical evidence, nothing to indicate who had executed the theft. The investigation expanded to include all airport employees with knowledge of the facility's infrastructure. Marcus's name appeared on a list of approximately 200 people who had access to maintenance areas beneath the cargo zone. He was re-interviewed in December. Same questions, same answers. No red flags. Investigators examined financial records for all airport employees, looking for sudden wealth or unusual spending patterns. Marcus's bank account showed nothing suspicious. He lived modestly, paid his rent on time, and maintained the same lifestyle he'd had for years. The FBI offered a $50,000 reward for information leading to an arrest. They interviewed hundreds of people. They pursued dozens of leads. But as weeks became months, the investigation stalled. The money had vanished as completely as if it had never existed. Marcus didn't touch the money for 6 months. He continued working his night shift at LAX, mopping the same floors, cleaning the same bathrooms, maintaining the same routine he'd followed for years. He was questioned twice more during the ongoing investigation, but was never considered a serious suspect. The terror Marcus felt during those first months was overwhelming. He barely slept. Every knock on his door sent his heart racing. Every time a supervisor spoke to him, he expected handcuffs. But nothing happened. The investigation continued around him, and he remained invisible. In May of 1980, Marcus visited the hidden storage closet for the first time since the theft. The 4 duffel bags sat exactly where he'd left them, undisturbed behind the false wall. He opened one bag and removed a single banded stack of $50 bills, $2,000. Over the following year, Marcus developed a careful system for accessing the money. He would visit the storage closet approximately once every 6 weeks, always during his regular shift, always appearing to be doing routine maintenance work. He would remove small amounts of cash, never more than $5,000 at a time, and would store it in his apartment. Spending the money required equal discipline. Marcus couldn't suddenly change his lifestyle. No new cars, no expensive clothes, no unexplained luxury purchases. Instead, he spent the stolen cash on everyday expenses while banking his legitimate paychecks. He paid rent in cash. He bought groceries in cash. He purchased gas in cash. His bank account showed the exact same modest deposits and minimal withdrawals it always had. To anyone observing, Marcus was simply a frugal man who saved his paychecks and paid for daily expenses with cash from his wallet. Completely ordinary, completely unremarkable. In 1983, Marcus moved from his Inglewood apartment to a slightly larger place in Carson. The upgrade was modest enough to be explained by years of saved wages. He furnished it simply with items from thrift stores and garage sales. He drove the same aging Dodge Dart until 1985, when he replaced it with a used Toyota that cost less than $4,000. Marcus sent money to his daughter Keisha, who was attending community college in Long Beach. He told her he'd been saving for years to help with her education. The amounts were reasonable, a few $100s every few months, nothing that would raise questions. The FBI investigation officially went cold in 1984, though the case remained open. Special Agent Chen retired in 1987, telling colleagues the LAX heist was the one case he'd never been able to crack. The money had simply vanished, and whoever took it had shown remarkable discipline in not spending it conspicuously. Marcus worked at LAX until 1994, when he retired at age 56. His retirement party was small but genuine. Co-workers gave him a cheap watch and a card signed by 20 people. His supervisor thanked him for over 20 years of reliable service. Marcus shook hands, smiled, and left the airport for the last time. By 1994, Marcus had moved approximately $800,000 from the hidden storage closet to his apartment. The remaining money, roughly $1.8 million, stayed behind the false wall in the abandoned sub-level closet. Marcus had no immediate need for it, and removing it all would have required too many trips, too much risk. In retirement, Marcus lived modestly in his Carson apartment. He took occasional trips to visit Keisha, who had married and moved to Oakland. He went to church on Sundays. He played chess in the park with other retired men. He was, by all appearances, exactly what he seemed. A former airport custodian living on Social Security and a small pension. The money in the storage closet remained untouched from 1994 until 2011. 17 years during which the hidden space gathered dust and the terminal above it underwent multiple renovations and expansions. The abandoned closet was forgotten, its location known only to maintenance blueprints filed in airport administration archives. Marcus visited LAX occasionally during his retirement, usually to pick up or drop off relatives at the passenger terminals. Each time he wondered if the money was still there, hidden behind a wall in a forgotten room 3 levels below the travelers walking past with their rolling suitcases. In September of 2008, Marcus suffered a stroke. The damage was moderate, but left him with limited mobility on his left side. He moved into an assisted living facility in Long Beach to be closer to Keisha. He was 70 years old, and his secrets remained intact. The LAX heist had become a footnote in Los Angeles crime history. Occasionally, true crime writers would mention it in articles about unsolved airport thefts. The FBI file remained open but inactive. Everyone who had worked the case had long since retired. The money was presumed spent, laundered, or hidden somewhere investigators would never find it. The truth sat behind a false wall in Terminal 6's sub-level, waiting. In March of 2011, LAX began a comprehensive infrastructure upgrade of Terminal 6. The project included updating electrical systems, replacing plumbing, and modernizing ventilation throughout the terminal's multiple levels. Maintenance crews worked from updated blueprints that showed every room, closet, and utility space in the terminal's sub-level structure. On April 14, 2011, a maintenance supervisor named Carlos Ruiz was reviewing the blueprints and noticed a discrepancy. The plans showed a storage closet that was larger than he remembered from previous inspections. He decided to check it personally. Carlos accessed the closet with a master key and found exactly what he expected. An abandoned storage space filled with old equipment and coated in decades of dust. But something seemed wrong. The room was smaller than the blueprints indicated, maybe 10 feet deep, rather than the 20 feet shown in the architectural plans. Carlos examined the back wall. It was painted the same industrial beige as the rest of the room, but the paint looked newer, less aged. He knocked on the wall and heard a hollow sound. Using a crowbar, Carlos pried at the wall's edge and discovered it wasn't concrete but plywood, painted and positioned to appear like a permanent structure. Behind it was another 10 feet of space. In that space were 4 olive green duffel bags, partially unzipped, filled with banded stacks of cash. Carlos immediately called airport security. LAXPD arrived within minutes, followed shortly by FBI agents. The bags contained approximately $1.8 million in cash. The bills aged and musty, but still legal tender. The serial numbers on many bills matched Federal Reserve distribution records from November 1979. The LAX heist had been solved 32 years after the crime. FBI investigators reopened the case immediately. The discovery of the money pointed to an airport employee with long-term access to Terminal 6's sub-level areas. Investigators pulled employment records for everyone who had worked in the terminal between 1970 and 2011, cross-referencing with the original suspect list from 1979. Marcus Dwayne Thompson's name appeared on both lists. Agents visited Marcus at the Long Beach assisted living facility on April 19, 2011. They found him in the community room, watching television. When they identified themselves and asked to speak with him privately, Marcus smiled. "I wondered when you'd figure it out," he said. Marcus confessed immediately. He provided a detailed account of the theft, including his years of planning, the specific techniques he'd used, and the discipline he'd maintained during 3 decades of hiding. He showed investigators bank records documenting his modest lifestyle and explained his system for slowly accessing and spending the stolen cash. "I never wanted to hurt anyone," Marcus told investigators. "The money was insured. The government got it back. I just needed a chance at a better life than I was ever going to have mopping floors." Federal prosecutors charged Marcus with theft of government property and related offenses. His advanced age and health issues complicated prosecution. Marcus was 72 years old, partially paralyzed, and living in assisted care. He posed no flight risk and no threat to public safety. In August of 2011, Marcus pleaded guilty to all charges. At his sentencing hearing in November 2011, his attorney argued that Marcus's age, health, and the non-violent nature of his crime warranted leniency. The prosecutor noted that Marcus had lived for 32 years on stolen money and had shown no remorse until being caught. Judge Patricia Morrison sentenced Marcus to 6 years in federal prison, but recommended a medical facility appropriate for his health needs. She noted in her sentencing remarks that while she couldn't condone Marcus's actions, she acknowledged the desperation that had motivated them and the discipline he'd shown in avoiding detection for over 3 decades. "You committed a sophisticated crime," Judge Morrison said. "You planned it carefully and executed it successfully. But you also chose to live a quiet life rather than indulge in luxury. That speaks to something in your character, though it doesn't excuse what you did." Marcus was transferred to a federal medical center in North Carolina, where he could receive appropriate care for his condition. The remaining $1.8 million recovered from the storage closet was returned to the Federal Reserve. The approximately $800,000 Marcus had spent over 3 decades was considered unrecoverable. Marcus Dwayne Thompson died on March 7, 2013, at age 74, while still in federal custody. His daughter Keisha arranged for his body to be returned to Los Angeles for burial. At his funeral, attended by fewer than a dozen people, Keisha spoke about a father she'd never fully understood. "He wasn't a bad man," she said. "He made a choice I'll never agree with, but I understand why he made it. He wanted better than what the world was willing to give him." The LAX heist remains one of the most unusual, unsolved then solved crimes in American history. Marcus Thompson's patience and discipline during the planning phase, his technical skill during the execution, and his restraint during 32 years of hiding demonstrated a level of criminal sophistication that surprised investigators. But what made the case truly remarkable was how ordinary Marcus remained. He didn't flee to Mexico or Brazil. He didn't adopt a false identity or plastic surgery. He simply continued being who he'd always been, a quiet man living a modest life in Los Angeles. The money gave him comfort and security, but it didn't fundamentally change him. The case prompted LAX to conduct a comprehensive security review of its cargo handling facilities. The maintenance tunnel system beneath Terminal 6 was sealed off or secured with upgraded locks and electronic monitoring. The cash holding protocols were completely redesigned to eliminate overnight storage of large currency shipments. The abandoned storage closet where Marcus hid $1.8 million for 17 years was demolished during Terminal 6's renovation. The space was converted into part of a larger utility room with regular inspection schedules and security monitoring. Special Agent Robert Chen, long retired when the case was finally solved, gave one interview about the resolution. "I always knew someone who worked at that airport took the money," he said. "But we interviewed everyone and they all checked out." Marcus Thompson checked out. He lived the same life before and after the theft. That's what made him invisible. He didn't get greedy. He didn't get cocky. He just stayed Marcus Thompson, the janitor, for 32 years. That takes a kind of discipline most criminals don't have. Today, the LAX heist serves as a case study in both criminal planning and the importance of comprehensive security systems that account for infrastructure vulnerabilities. Marcus Thompson proved that even the most secure facilities have blind spots, and that the greatest security weakness is often the assumption that certain people are too ordinary to be dangerous. The money Marcus spent during his lifetime, roughly $800,000, gave him 3 decades of modest comfort. It paid for his daughter's education, his retirement years, and the small pleasures of a life lived without financial desperation. Whether that justifies the crime is a question each person must answer individually. What's undeniable is that Marcus Dwayne Thompson executed one of the most patient and disciplined thefts in modern American history, and that his eventual capture came not from investigative brilliance or informant betrayal, but from a maintenance supervisor with a crowbar and an eye for architectural inconsistencies. The story of the LAX heist reminds us that major crimes aren't always committed by sophisticated criminal organizations or violent career criminals. Sometimes they're executed by ordinary people, pushed to extraordinary actions by circumstances, desperation, or simply the opportunity that presents itself to someone patient enough to wait for it. Marcus Thompson waited 7 years to find that opportunity. He spent 3 more planning it. He lived 32 years with the consequences. And in the end, a forgotten storage closet in Terminal 6's sublevel held the answer to one of Los Angeles's most enduring criminal mysteries.